Macro and the micro. This is the big picture. This is the big picture of the ancient Middle East. Egypt, down in the south, Alexandria, the Nile River, the Sinai Peninsula, ancient Canaan, the Canaanites, and you see up to Damascus, Tadmor, and down to Mesopotamia. Babylonia, Mesopotamia, the two rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates. This is called the Fertile Crescent. The Fertile Crescent. What's in the middle? Desert. No water. No water, lack of water. That's the whole concept. And the land of Canaan, later to be the land of Israel. What continent is it on? Where are we now? What continent? Asia. Asia, and Asia Minor. M-I-N-O-R. It's a bridge. Why? Why is this land been conquered over and over? Megiddo, 26 different layers, 20 cities. And there's no Roman here earlier. Why? It's a land bridge connected Africa to Europe to Asia. Natural bridge with natural water sources. Fertile Crescent. Over here, the micro. Megiddo, guys, is right here. Megiddo is here on the map. Look at the roads. The Salt Road, the Via Maris, the road up to Lebanon, the road to Damascus, the road over to the Jordan River Valley. So if you controlled Megiddo, you controlled the commerce, you controlled the road, and this is why on this plain, the Jezreel Valley, the Megiddo Plain, this is why there were 14 major battles. 4, all the way from Thutmose III, Egyptian pharaoh, in 1479 BC, up to General Allenby at the end of the First World War, defeats the Turks and the Germans here on the plain. 14 major battles. As a matter of fact, that first battle by Thutmose, we have a battle plan. For the first time in history, they found in Tel El Amarna the actual plan. This was the roads and the valleys. There was a main valley that came down called the Iron Valley, I-R-O-N. And then there were 2 secondary, smaller valleys that led into the Jezreel Valley. The Canaanites were the king of Megiddo and the king of a place called Kadesh, K-A-D-E-S-H. They was rebellion against the Egyptian hegemony here. And they rebelled, and the Pharaoh said, we're going to deal with these guys. Now, the Canaanites said, listen, the Egyptians have a big army, and they have chariots, and they're never going to make it through that Via Maris, that Iron Valley. They know that we can be on top and pick them off, and they can't get the chariots through. We're going to put all of our troops at the northern kind of passageway and the southern. Actually, the northern and the southern. And we'll wait there. So the Egyptian commanders told Thutmose, listen, we can't get anything through this valley. And he said, well, you know, they're going to be waiting for us at the other places. That's obvious. Take the chariots apart. Take the horses by one, take them through the narrow ravine, put guards on the upper ridge, send out a reconnaissance unit on both sides to make sure that they could get through. And the commander said, no, and he said, yes, I'm the commander-in-chief. And that's exactly what they did. And what they put them at Megiddo, they put everything back together and outflanked the Canaanites who were waiting at the natural passageways. This was all documented. Our first battle plan in modern history was about this battle. Again, 3,000 plus years here at Megiddo. Now, let's just talk a little bit about the tell itself. I told you yesterday a little bit, you were half asleep, but it's okay. Chalcolithic period, we have here some caves from stone to copper around 7,000 years ago, 6,000 years ago. We have the Bronze Age starting, okay, 5,000 years ago, those are the Canaanites here. And the Bronze Age, you can't see till now. Okay, there it is. Actually, the Bronze Age is down below. Sorry about that. I thought the light was going to work. I'll do that again. Love playing with this. It's the only hydraulic lift model in Israel. Down below, next to the red light, we're going to see on top, is like a round stage. Okay? And there are walls all around it. This was the pagan Canaanite kind of cultic area in the eastern part of the mountain. Why the east? Thank you. There's sun worshippers, moon worshippers. Every mound that is excavated in this land, where do they start? In the east. Why? You're always going to find some sort of pagan altar. And so that platform for sacrifices is down at the Canaanite period. Okay, we're like 4,000 years plus back in time. And they found animal bones, no human bones, very important. There were child sacrifices. We know from the Bible, a pagan god called Moloch. But not here, which is good. And so we have the Bronze Age is down over there. That's the Canaanite. I need another gate, 1 second. I think the northern gate, does it work? Okay. And underneath this upper level, which is from the 7th century BC Assyrian, is the old Canaanite gate. Now we never knew about this until the University of Tel Aviv started excavating here. And there's the older gate. This one right here, I'm sorry, I left my pointer. I went to Solomonic Gate. Right over here, the Solomonic Gate is Iron Age. This is 3,000 years ago. This is already 3,000 plus 3,500 years ago. And the upper levels of, I'm going to take that down, the Bronze Age is disappearing. Help to history here, and that's the Canaanite. It's underneath. There's stratification here, and on top we have the Israelite city of Solomon and of Ahab. These kings, one of the United Kingdom and later a king of Israel. Remember that the kingdoms are divided up. Solomon taxed the people, and his son Rehoboam, what did he do? He taxed the people again. They thought they were going to get rid of it. And so with Rehoboam, we have now a division of 10 tribes up in the north called Israel. And in the south, Rehoboam is Judah and Benjamin. They now make up a new country in Judah, into the south. So these are really the kings of Israel. Up over here, you see there are stables. There are large stables. This was a chariot city. There were 4 major chariot cities in the land, we know from the Book of Kings. That chariot city was here at Megiddo. There was one at Chatzor, closer to Damascus. Another one at Gezer, outside of Tel Aviv, and Jerusalem. They were like district capitals. So he had all his troops and armies. There are the stables over there. There's a palace over here, another palace. These are all Israelite period on top. The walls are Israelite walls from Ahab. The Solomonic walls are down here for those people who can look a little bit earlier, called casemate, little closed rooms. These are the times of King Ahab and all this stratification. Big problem in Megiddo. No wells, no springs inside the city. If you were under siege, you had a major, major problem. What'd you do for water if it didn't rain? Had cisterns. What happens if it does rain? Well, Ahab actually built a tunnel. Let me see if it's going to like this. Is also usually never, but I'll give it a chance. Anyways, water. Is anything blinking over there? No? No? Well, you see a large hole.
Yeah, right here.
That's the western part of the temple. There's like a shaft. And what was done in the Israelite kings, a shaft was dug down. It's around 100 feet. And then a 300-foot tunnel to get to a spring that was outside the city walls. In other words, if the Assyrians are around you and you needed water, you could quietly get to that spring and bring the water back into the city. There's a book that James Michener wrote called The Source. Anyone ever read it? It's this thick, but it's a typical Michener. The first 100 pages are torture. It's just, should I go on? Should I go on? Should I go on? And then it opened up the story of the family that passed on the guard post of the water here at Megiddo. The source, it was called Tel Makor. Makor is source. And it was built around all of the life in the different time periods here. So we start down at the Stone Age, copper, bronze, iron, and then we get into the more, I think, the Greeks and the Romans, we get into more modern times, and I am convinced that our period is going to be called the plastic age. No, I'm very serious. I'm very serious. I'm thinking of what people are going to find 2000, not just in the ground, also in the oceans. It's going to be the plastic age, and I think they're going to find Coca-Cola cans, really, at the camps on Mount Everest. They're going to find them every place, and we're going to be like Coca-Cola 2. Because, you know, there's Bronze Age, early Bronze Age, middle Bronze Age, late Bronze Age. I think we're kind of in the early Coca-Cola 2 stratification when they start looking at our garbage. Because this is what it's all about here. Ancient garbage, ceramics, stamps, coins. That's what's going to tell you who is here and what happened. He lived in Haifa in a community called the Templars. They were a group of Christians from Germany who came here in the 1850s. They set up little colonies, preparing the land for the second coming. And he was an archaeologist. He excavated here in 1902, 1904. And there's one trench, one big hole. It's called the Schumacher Trench. It was a bad way to excavate. They destroyed a lot of stuff. Today, we do little squares, work down slowly, but they went right into the tell. And unfortunately, all of his documentation was lost during the First World War. We know very little about really what he found. We can see what he did, but what he found. That's sort of the beginning of the 20th century. Okay? And then the big excavation here in the 1920s and 30s, Chicago, University of Chicago, Illinois, the Oriental Research Institute, by the way, this building here, they lived here and they worked here. That's the original 20s and 30s building for them. Did some major digs here, like the Canaanite platform, and a lot of the Canaanite Bronze Age material is from the University of Chicago. Most of the actual material is not here. It's in Chicago, on the university campus in their archaeology school in the States. And then the last major digs here were in the 60s and the 70s. Yigal Yadin, major archaeologist, he did Masada and other places. Believe it or not all that material has been printed yet. There's still stuff out there that hasn't been summarized from the digs of the 60s and the 70s. The last scratch here, University of Tel Aviv. You see they're actually working. Every once in a while, you'll see some black shade netting. And Tel Aviv University, and they're updating things. Things are still going on. Okay, so the excavation started then, and they're still going on to this very. So we're right here at a staircase, and this was the pedestrian entrance into the city of Solomon. 3,000 years ago, there was a big water hole down the building. Actually, they worked again. There's a new wall that they uncovered right over there, and this had a guard. And the guards were there. Where we are now was the ramp for the chariots. You couldn't get a chariot through there. That was pedestrian check, and the gates are in the north. Why? Because all the problems came from the north. The Assyrians came from the north. The Babylonians came from the north. The Hittites came from the north. The Arameans came from the north. You wanted a strong wall and gate in the northern part of every city in this part of this land. So that was pedestrian, and this was the chariot. We assume they measured the stables here, and the archaeologists assume that there were maybe 150 chariots. You with me? How many horses did that mean?
300.
Around 450 Y. You had, at that time period, it was a two horses. 2 horsepower. Yeah, 2 horsepower and a spare tire. They found illustrations, wall engravements and pictures. Not necessarily from here, but actually in Iraq. In Iraq, on some of the old Assyrian palaces, and the chariots were 2 horses, and they would take another horse as a backup into battle. So we figure around 450 in 2 large stables and 150 chariots. Old Jerusalem is the Roman grid to this very day. They built a city off the Tell, down in the valley, where they could put a Cardo, a Decumanus. This was kind of old and rickety, and there's nothing Greek, Roman here at all. This is the end over here, Persian. People, Nazareth is not mentioned in the Old Testament, in the Hebrew Scriptures. There's nothing mentioned about it at all. It was a small, out of the way, little town, no place at the end of no place. We don't even know what the word Nazareth really comes from, the root. We think maybe it's named after a local plant or a place of guarding, being that we came up out of the valley, and on the cliff it was a good place to guard, a good guard point. And we don't hear about Nazareth until right now. Archangel Gabriel. You'll find him in Jewish tradition, in Islamic tradition, and in Christian tradition. Not just an angel, it's the archangel. And the top of the line. And we have angels mentioned. Interesting here also with Elizabeth, cousin, the comparison of Abraham and Sarah in her old age of giving birth. There's a lot going on here, parallels here in Nazareth at that time. People, this is all about Mary. Here is all about Mary. Every window has a little kind of point in it. You put two together, it's an M. On the top of the church, the lighthouse over here on the top of the church, everything is M and M and M and M. These are Madonnas, all here from all over the world, from Ireland, every country on the face of the earth. And we're going to see some very interesting ones from Japan. The Madonna is Japanese. From Ethiopia, the Madonna is an Ethiopian feature and woman. So this is all about Annunciation and Mary, and we're going to go into the church. I can't speak in the church, or if they let me, I'll do it softly. But right here is a picture, right in front of us here. We're going to go down to the grotto. That's the 2,000-year-old structure here. It's bedrock underneath. This is downtown Nazareth. 2,000 years ago, the columns are Crusader, the mosaics are Byzantine. This church has been built, destroyed, built, destroyed, built, destroyed. This is the new church from 1960, the 1960s, and it's built over the older churches. That's typical church history in this, the western facade. All the churches here face to the east. Come over here. Guys, come around a little bit before I want you looking at this. Over there. Looking in that direction. And I get this down so I get it right. The wall itself has like 4 elements chiseled into the facade: fire, air, water, and earth. And they represent the material world as opposed to the spiritual. Now, you'll see the 4 apostles over here, starting with Matthew. And notice the traditional symbols. The winged man symbolizes embodiment. Mark is the lion. Second one over. The winged lion is resurrection. Luke, with the ox right in front of us, winged ox, is sacrifice. And John the eagle, ascension. All symbolic of the life of Jesus here on the wall. And to the left-hand side, we have already original sin. You see, this is a little advertisement for AIT. Members over here on the left-hand side. This is right out of original sin in the Garden of Eden. And we have over here from Genesis, the book of Genesis, there shall be a son born, Emmanuel, to be with God. You see here, Emmanuel, and this mixture of New Testament visions and Old Testament visions on the facade of the church. In short, and the Word became flesh. And the Word became flesh. Verbum caro habitat in nobis.
That's what that
This
says?
way.
What is the spelling of John and so on?
Joanne. This is the Cardo here. This is the north-south main street of Magdala during the Roman period. There's a street going from east to west. That's called the Decumanus. Every Roman street, and the stores were over here on the left-hand side. It's like a marketplace inside of this ancient Magdala. And we're going to come over here. Anyone interested? It is 66 degrees and sunny in Tiberias. Nice, very pleasant. Okay, now let me start this way before I get to this object. People, on the 9th day of the Hebrew month of Av, A-V. By the way, there's a Hebrew calendar, there's a Christian calendar. We use the Christian calendar for work at the school, but Orthodox religious Jews will know the Hebrew date. it says on your ID card the Hebrew date when you were born and the Christian date, or what we call civilian date. Okay? And the 9th day of Av, which by the way is a Babylonian, the Hebrew calendar, the months of Babylonian names, the temple is destroyed. The second temple is destroyed in Jerusalem. Jesus prophesied this some 40 years prior to he said they're taken down to the last stone on the Temple Mount. And the temple is destroyed, and what we called at that time temple-based Judaism, the sacrifices, the Levites playing music, singing songs, the priests doing all the work, the high priest going into the Holy of Holies once a year, that disappears. It's a catastrophe because now Jews have to redefine their religious approach to life. Some of the Jews from Jerusalem spread down to the south, the Negev, and others come up to the Galilee to join those small Jewish communities that were here at the time of the destruction of the temple. At that moment, we go into a time period. This is some 40 years after Jesus is already crucified and resurrection. And we go into a period of Jews redefining themselves. The temple's gone. So the religious life moves into rabbinical Judaism. Interesting, in Tiberias, they start interpreting and discussing the laws that the priests and the Levites knew by heart. And there's this ongoing transition. And up here in the Galilee, we call them Galilean synagogues. And the synagogues now turn into a house of prayer. Synagogue means a meeting place, a meeting hall, a place of gathering. Prior, when the temples were around, there were synagogues. A lot of Jews think the temple's destroyed, we build synagogues, keep our Judaism. No, there were synagogues in Babylon, but they were houses of study. They studied. Jerusalem was the ritual. They were just study halls. Now the buildings have to take on a new kind of approach in Judaism, and this is what happens here. One second, this is the photographer, I'm sure. I am here. Oh, okay, hang up. And so this is a new approach. Now, this item, this was found, this is the original. There's a replica outside over there on the floor. This is the one and only first century synagogue. We got a few of them, but this one's something special, that we found something like this inside on the floor, right in the middle of the synagogue. And on it is a 7-branched menorah right here. This is the ancient symbol of the Jewish people, not the Star of David. Guys, Star of David's new. David never used it. It's only 300 years old. It's a Zionist sign on the flag of Israel. If you see the shield of David, you know what Star of David? It was only a decoration then. The ancient symbol of Israel is the menorah, the 7-branched. When the temple was destroyed, what did they carry off to Rome? A flag with a Star of David? No, they covered the menorah. They took it from the temple. They were in the first temples and the second temples. The 7-branched right here. We don't have a lot of them, find them, but here we do, we find them here. And this one's so cool because on the bottom, you see 3 legs. That's the original menorah that was made in the desert by the children of Israel as they're coming out of Egypt. They gathered up all the gold. Some of them have flat. This is a real close kind of rendition or copy of the original menorah, and the columns on the side, that meant the Temple Mount itself. The Temple Mount here. They are for the kind of replica of the temple. You're up here in the north. The temple is destroyed, or partially destroyed, and it's over here. On the side, when you come around to the side, there's a 3-dimensional kind of beautiful work, as if you're inside the temple. It's really cool. When you get a little bit back to look, you can see it's a great work here. And on the bottom, come over here, guys. You see over here, this is a replica of a coin with another menorah. Over here, you see another menorah on the right-hand side, and similar to the coin that was found here 29 CE on the floor of the synagogue. So this is a one-timer piece. There's no other synagogues that we found anything like this. Maybe a replica of the temple in Jerusalem. You're up here in the north, couldn't always get to Jerusalem. So you brought Jerusalem to you. And this is the original piece right over here.
First century Jewish synagogue.
round. You see how the synagogue seating was roundabout, not rows, not like churches in modern temples. It was roundabout. That's what the ancient synagogues were all about. So that's the time period. Now, being that we're so close to Capernaum, there's a high possibility that he knew about the synagogue. He could have frequented the synagogue. We're going to see a synagogue in Capernaum, but it's 300 years after he was crucified. The actual one there. This one, if we're getting any closer or authentic, this is the baby right here. This is what it looked like. Look at the ornate entranceway of cut stones, right over here, cut stones on the right. You see this is the entrance hall. You see the low seats in over here. There's a study hall right next to that, and then we'll go into the main hall of the synagogue. Now, did you know that? As the Muslims pray to Mecca, Jews pray to Jerusalem. Muslims originally prayed to Jerusalem, but that was changed during the life of Muhammad. And so we have great majority of the synagogues are on a north-south sort of axis, praying to Jerusalem. I must tell you right now, this one's on an east-west axis. It's not 100%, but there is something here that talks to us. I'll explain to you about that north-south. Jerusalem is that direction. I'll show you what's special about this synagogue, keeping that kind of approach of praying towards Jerusalem. So we'll go through the entrance hall.